Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to tonight's City Council meeting. I'm certainly pleased to have everybody here. This is Tuesday, December 11th, and we start every City Council meeting by getting a roll call of your City Council.
Councilors Aguilar?
Here.
Anderson?
Here.
Entenmann?
Here.
Erpenbach? Here. Jameson?
Here.
Karski?
Here.
Rolfing? Staggers?
Present.
Thank you very much. We start our meeting with an invocation. What we would ask you to do is to please stand. We're very, very blessed to have Dr. Ron Tottingham tonight from Empire Baptist Temple. After Dr. Ron finishes the prayer, we'd ask you to remain standing for our Pledge of Allegiance. Welcome back, Dr. Ron.
Thank you. I wanted to mention that I want to pray for one of your members is out tonight for open heart surgery and so forth and so on. Sacrifice that you all give here is as much or more than mine in some ways. Thank you for it. Our Heavenly Father, tonight, thank you for your blessings. Thank you for our city that we live in. Thank you for those who will sacrifice, not just on the board here and commission, but also those that will come to the meetings and take an interest in our city. We pray you'd bless it tonight, and we pray that the Spirit of our God would guide and direct in all the things that we need to do and the decisions need to be made, that this would continue to be one of the greatest cities in the world. And we'll thank you for it. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Mayor. Oh, I was going to.
Well, good evening, everybody. Great to have you here. What a great crowd. And we certainly have some introductions to make, but we do have some special awards that we'd like to announce tonight, and thank you very much. Why don't we start with the Employee of the Year Award for Safety. And I am very, very pleased. Well, first of all, why don't I just give a little introduction first. The City of Sioux Falls recognizes an employee every year or an employee team who have made a significant and measurable contribution towards achieving the city's safety standards and our objectives. Recipients of this award have demonstrated a strong safety consciousness and have developed or directed safety programs which has led to a safer work environment and contribute to a higher morale and productivity in the workplace. We would like to congratulate the following employees who were nominated for the award this year and it was Sandy Frentz of our Health Department, Sergeant Dale Roman of our Police team, and from our Parks and Rec Operations Division, all the employees of Parks and Rec. And I am very, very pleased to recognize this year's award goes to Police Sergeant Dale Roman. Police Sergeant. I want to tell you a little bit about Sergeant Dale. He is an armor for the police department, and as such, he is responsible for all firearms instruction. Wait a second, is your bride here? Come on up, please. I can't go. Come on up, please. Welcome. Would you mind introducing these folks, please?
This is my wife, Linda Roman. This is my 6-year-old, Kylie Roman.
Hello, Kylie. Hello, Linda. Welcome. He is the armor for the police department, and as such, he is responsible for all of the firearms instruction and the care and maintenance of the police department's firearms. As the armor, Dale adheres to the strictest of safety policies, knowing that the lives of his fellow officers are at stake. Dale's attention to detail and staying abreast of industry news and practices has ensured the highest level of officer safety regarding the use of firearms by officers of the Sioux Falls Police Department. Here are just several examples of Dale's attention to detail and, of course, his dedication. Dale became aware of issues with certain brands of flashlights mounted to the department's firearms, which could lead to the malfunction of the weapon itself and possible serious injury to the officer. His diligence and research now ensures that officers have the correct brand of flashlight mounted to their Glock firearm in order to prevent a weapon malfunction. Dale's diligence also led to the discovery of unusual wear patterns on firing pins. Dale personally inspected each and every handgun in order to detect and replace faulty firing pins. Faulty firing pins are potentially life-threatening, and in addition, Dale has mandated that 3 levels of safety be implemented during training exercises to ensure that live ammunition never be accidentally introduced into any training scenario. This safety protocol requires each officer to first check one another, followed by having the instructor check each officer, and also having a designated safety officer for each training exercise. These are just 3 of the examples of what Dale has brought to the team and how he is keeping our team and our city safe. A hearty congratulations to Sergeant Dale Roman and, of course, his family for being the City of Sioux Falls 2012 Employee of the Year for Safety. Next, I have the pleasure, we have 2 other awards that are provided yearly to the 1 or 2 of the 1,100 city employees of city government. This one is called the V.L. Cusenberry Award, and it was established in memory of former Mayor Cusenberry, and it recognizes and honors annually a non-management employee who demonstrates exceptional performance, judgment, productivity, loyalty, professional pride, and other noteworthy accomplishments in relation to city employment. There were 5 nominees this year, and I certainly want to give them justice and recognize them as well. These nominees were John Dupre, who's a police sergeant here in Sioux Falls, Pete Lerdahl, who's a park mechanic with the Parks and Rec team, Mike Murphy, a firefighter, of course, with our fire department, Bruce Nordoff, who's a lead utility system worker, as well as Ronaldo Perez, who's a lead parking equipment service technician. This year's 2012 Cusenberry Award winner is Pete Lerdahl. Pete. Pete is a park mechanic with the Parks and Rec team here in Sioux Falls. Pete has worked for the Parks Department for over 30 years, and his mechanical knowledge and willingness to continually improve his skills have made him invaluable. Pete has the ability to repair virtually any piece of equipment, from a simple gas-powered string trimmer to one as complicated as a snowcat groomer at Great Bear. Pete is responsible for supporting operations at Great Bear by completing all the maintenance and inspections. Through his efforts, he's ensured that the safety of the users is second to none in the region. The positive comments received annually from the ski area's insurance carrier are a testament to the pride Pete takes in his work. Pete, are you here alone, or is your family here? Would you mind? Come on forward, please. Sorry, Kylie did it. You have to do it. Linda did it. Okay. You're cute, too. You're cute, too. On behalf of the city, let's recognize Pete and family for their contributions. Thank you very much. Next is the Gene Fullenkamp Management Excellent Award, and it's established in memory of former HR manager Jeannie Fullenkamp, and it recognizes and honors annually a high performer and leader in the mid-management employee group whose performance drives change, builds commitment, maximizes talent, and focuses on excellence in customer service. We also had 5 nominees for this award as well. They were Mike Burkhart, a light superintendent within city government, Alicia Cholera, who's the assistant director of public health, Brad Goodroad, who's a fire battalion chief, Troy Lubers, who's a police lieutenant, and Angie Youthy, who's with compensation and benefits manager within city government. And I am very, very pleased to announce that this year's winner of the 2012 Jeannie Fulenkamp Management Excellent Award is Angie Youthy. Please, come on, husband, come on. Angie, would you mind introducing your family?
Sure, my husband Lloyd and my son Bailey.
All right, Bailey and Lloyd, welcome to the team. Good to have you here. I'm going to tell you a little bit about your mom. All right, Bailey? Here we go. Angie has worked for the city's HR team for over 13 years and is responsible for all of the city's payroll, pension, and benefit administration for over 1,100 full-time employees, as well as several hundred part-time and seasonal employees. One thing that is a secret out there, and I wish it wasn't, was the following. Angie was instrumental in the success of the recent pension changes. She was actively engaged with the pension boards throughout the study and the deliberation process and personally held 46 informational meetings with city employees, reaching over 800 of our team. It is because of her credibility and the efforts of city employees, they voted overwhelmingly to approve the pension plan changes, stabilizing the city's pension system and saving the city over $100 million over the next 30 years. I am very, very pleased to recognize the winner of the Jeannie Fulenkamp Award as Angie Youthy. Angie? I'd also like to, again, welcome everybody to tonight's meeting. We do have some special guests. I know Professor Staggers would like to introduce some folks, but before we do that, we have Boy Scout Troop 371. They are from Gloria Day Lutheran Church here in the great city of Sioux Falls. They are attending the meeting to fulfill a requirement of citizenship in the community, and then they get a merit badge if they fulfill this. There's about 16 scouts here and 4 adults. The adult leaders are Henry Hitt, Keith Stroh, and Doug Hoy. Boy Scout Troop 371 and your leaders, would you mind standing, please? Welcome. Thank you very much. Councilor Staggers, would you mind?
Well, I'd like to introduce a couple of my students from state and local government that I'm teaching this semester. We got Devin, and we also have Jesse, too.
And from what I understand, there's some other students here from USF. Let's get the whole crew up. The USF students who are either forced or loving this city government gig, stand up, please. Very good.
I feel embarrassed. I didn't see the rest of the students, but...
Don't worry. Would
yeah.
you, Councilor Sayers, any further comments?
Well, we're coming down to the end of the semester, and as we're coming down to the end of the semester, we have extra credit for coming to the Sioux Falls City Council meeting, and so we tend to get more people at the end of the semester here.
Very good.
So.
Well, again, welcome
learning a
everybody.
lot.
It's so great to have you here. It certainly is. Well, we're now going to move on to tonight's consent agenda. Council, any changes or comments?
Move to approve, Erpenbach.
Second, Entman.
Councilor Box made a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda. It was also seconded. If there is no discussion, a roll call vote, please.
Councilors Entenmann?
Yes.
Erpenbach?
Yes.
Jamison?
Yes.
Karski?
Yes.
Staggers?
Yes.
Aguilar? Yes. Anderson?
Yes.
That is passed 7-0. Now move on to tonight's regular agenda. Council, any changes?
Move to second.
Councilor Aguilar has made a motion to approve. It was seconded by Councilor Jamison. Is there any discussion? A roll call vote, please.
Councilors Entenmann?
Yes.
Erpenbach?
Yes.
Jamison?
Yes.
Karski?
Yes.
Staggers?
Yes.
Aguilar? Yes. Anderson?
Yes.
That is passed 7-0. Folks, you do have an opportunity to engage your council. Again, we'd like to welcome you here, but if you want to also play a role and talk to them, you can. We'd ask you to keep it to 5 minutes or less. Just introduce yourself to the people of Sioux Falls. And if there is a topic that is not covered later on in the agenda, please just come on forward right now. Anybody? Welcome. Mr. Weiderman, welcome.
Good evening, Mayor, Council.
Evening.
I'm I.L. Weideman from Sioux Falls, North Dakota Avenue. Something that's really stuck in my craw is one of the council members that's pushing for an indoor swimming pool over at the VA complex, part of the VA area. The people there don't want it. I don't understand why this is being pushed down their throat. Everything that was said this evening, until one of the park gentlemen denied it, was geared for that swimming pool, period. Money-wise, they're paying for people to design the pool. This wasn't done for Drake Springs. Money wasn't set aside until everything was approved. This, it sounds like there's money already on the books to be spent for the Spellberg pool. That's wrong, period. And the other thing is, on this railroad system downtown, why is the city buying this property from the railroad? Why don't the developers that want it so bad, that are going to get TIF money for it, why aren't they buying it? Why aren't they taking the ball and rolling with it? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Weiderman. Mr. Stango, welcome.
Hi, Tim Stanga. I'm like you guys. I've been here since 4 o'clock. A lot of good things went on at 4 o'clock. I'm hoping that with the railroad relocation that the city council stands up and really looks at what's really going on with the railroad. One thing that I realized is that with the indoor swimming pool, I advise the city to sit down with the public before we sit down with special interest. Because I thought that building a pool, or even an indoor pool, shouldn't the public have the say versus special interests? I just think that the Parks Department has to re-look at looking at special interests before the public. Because the public is the one that's paying for it, and the public is the one that's supposedly supposed to be built for, not special interests. Another one was the tree trimming. I'm adamant that the city should do their job, trimming their trees in their boulevard. When I brought this up, I didn't bring it up for the city to take this on. I brought it up for the city to hire somebody to contract to be able to do their job. The city wants us to take care of our sidewalks. They want us to shovel them sidewalks. If somebody falls on that sidewalk and there's a lawsuit, who has to pay that lawsuit? I do, the person that owns the property, not the city. If somebody stubs their toe on my sidewalk and they fall, I pay for it, the city does not. But they tell me what I have to do. I brought this up because I believe that the city should stand up and start doing something for the public. When it comes down to snow gates, that's doing something for the public. Whether it's going to cost extra money, well, I guess that's what we're going to have to do for the public. We're going to have to do our job. When it comes down to trimming trees, we're already paying $1 million a year. What would somebody come in and contract that job? What would they come out with? What would their bid be? You know, we charge $150 an hour through the city to trim trees. What if somebody came in and said we'd do it for $100 an hour? What if somebody came in and said we'd do it for $75 an hour? Would it be cheaper than what we're paying now? That's something we got to ask ourselves. Are we going to be here for the public? Or are we going to spend our money on special interest, like buying the property down at the railroad? Or spending money downtown against the River Greenway? You know, it's special interest that we really look at versus what we're going to do for the public. And I just think that we got to start doing something as a community for the public. And I've always brought up that the dump is not cheap to start. And to be able to have a recycling facility out at the dump, they tell me that that's going to be expensive. But we spent $6 million on the River Greenway. We have spent $6 million, and we spent $5 million on interest for the event center. That's $11 million we could have used to build a recycling facility out at the dump. Things can be done in this city, but it always comes down to, boy, can we afford that to help the public? I think it's time that we start looking at what we can do for the citizens of Sioux Falls versus special interest. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stinga. Folks, anybody else want to engage the council? Boy Scouts, anybody? Welcome. Come on forward, sir. Welcome.
You don't worry about me. You go ahead.
Yes.
Don't worry about you. Well, everything was so tense coming in here, and I'm kind of a nervous person. And my wife said,
Sir, would you
Charlie
mind,
Roberts.
Mr. Roberts, and just so the people of Sioux Falls can hear you, I apologize. You need to speak into the mics.
All
Welcome.
right, well,
Welcome,
I
Mr.
had
Roberts.
I had to talk to them because they're the ones that are important.
Very good.
No, I'm kidding. I started to say, everything is so tense. I had to have a little humor in my cord. My wife said to wear a red power tie. I don't have a red power tie, so I wore a red power nose.
Okay.
Okay, enough of that. I came to speak about Spellerberg Park.
Mr. Roberts, that's a first for me, so good job. Thank you. Go right ahead, sir.
I could just sit down and be happy now. I came at 4 this afternoon, and I sat through all the meetings and everything, and the only thing I got out of it was that an indoor pool at Spellerberg Park was a done deal. And do you have a comment on that? Would you have a comment on that?
Mr. Roberts, this is your opportunity to engage the council. So if you've got comments, please just feel free to relay them.
That was my comment. Is that a done deal?
Well, I did, with your permission, Councilor Bach and Council, I think that I also watched the council informational meeting today, and I think they made it very clear that no, this is not a done deal.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think
really...
Mr. Don Kearney also was very, very eloquent and said, of course it's not a done deal. The funding, and this was also discussed, the funding for any project of any magnitude, including an indoor pool, has to be approved by the council. And there's been no money that has been set aside to build a brand new indoor pool. So no, that is not a done deal.
Okay.
Does that seem appropriate, Councilor Bach? Thank you.
It just really sounded that way, though. I mean, I accept your explanation. That's
very good.
Then this is another really touchy question, but I'm going to ask anyway, because from the Center for Active Generations, I heard, and it may only be hearsay. So,
and again, Mr. Roberts, this is your opportunity to engage the council. It's not a Q&A session. I apologize. I'd like to welcome you to the council, but if you've got some comments you want to relay, please relay them. But this isn't a forum for dialogue back and forth between the council and the public, or the mayor and the public. So please, if you've got a comment, relay it, and
okay.
We'll go from there. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Spellerberg Park is not the place for a large indoor aquatics water center. It would simply gut the park, all the amenities that Mr. Clarney spoke to, adding to it, are the same reasons that we have used not to put it there. Augie, Sioux Falls College, Special Olympics, VA, Children's Care Hospital, the swimming team, the synchronet team, the physical therapy groups, and so on. They all need adequate parking, time to get in and out, room to move, and by the time we put all of those there, there will be no park. And the fact that sometimes you see it empty does not mean that it's not used, because if we went to any of the parks right now, we would see the same thing. I would not want an indoor swimming facility at any of our present parks. There just is not enough room for the things that have been addressed being added there. You've heard it all before. Thank you.
You did a very good job. No, thank you. And thanks for the levity with the Rudolph nose. We appreciate that as well. We can use that every now and then. In fact, I may take it from you after you're done. Folks, anybody else who wanted to engage the council tonight, welcome.
I'm Carol Flower. I live in the Park Ridge area, and I lived there when this was the edge of town. My father built one of the first homes in this area, and he would come home from work. He worked for the city, by the way. Came home from work, and he'd work until it was too dark to work anymore, and he built our house with hand tools. He didn't have any mechanical tools. It was all done by hand. So this is an area that I think is somewhat special, and I can remember when I was a kid walking up the VA when it was nothing but weeds and getting my first poison ivy in there. There was no park there at that time. There is a park there now. It's a relatively small park compared to a great number of parks. It's a park where people walk their dogs, they take their kids and picnic and have a playground area there. And when you look at that park, that area that is utilized in that way is relatively small. And for the city to even consider putting a huge aquatic center is what I would regard as being very inappropriate because of the problems that would result. And it's something that I think the city council, if this comes up to you, should be thinking very seriously about, because the problems that would result would be very negative. I think when you talk to real estate people, they will tell you that parks enhance neighborhoods, but when they're talking about parks, they're talking about green parks, trees, grass, not big complexes, not overdevelopment, which does the reverse. And so you've got people's lives that are going to be impacted by what decision you make here. There is appropriate space for a big complex like this. The city is thinking of building the tennis facilities and skating facilities, and thinking in terms of some of the special interest groups that have teams and so forth. This would be a very inappropriate use of a park. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Folks, anybody else? Welcome. And sir, if you want to get ready as well, come on forward. Thank you. Welcome, sir.
Hi, my name is Dylan Dwyer. I'm a student at USF.
Hi, Dylan.
First off, I'd like to say that all of the arguments that I've heard so far about keeping Spellerberg Park and not having the new aquatic center are legitimate, and I can understand why they would all want to have it there. But at the same time, I feel as though that Sioux Falls has many, many parks already, and taking one to make a brand new large aquatic center may not be, removing all the parks. A big thing about that I'd like to say is that in cases such as right now, it's very, very cold outside, and I, for one, am not trying to go to the park. There are many months in the Sioux Falls year that are cold, and a lot of people are not exactly going out in the park. However, if we had this indoor aquatic center, that would be a new opportunity for exercise, whatever, anytime that people are around. I know that I would be able to walk a distance to go in if that meant further parking. That would not be an issue if I could use the big pool still. So that's all I'd have to say about that.
Thank you, Dylan. Sir, welcome.
My name is Barry Zacharias, and this is my little son. We just got in from a band concert, so.
Barry, would you mind introducing your son as well?
My name is Kirk Zacharias.
Welcome.
And he's part of the Boy Scouts troop, though he's not in uniform since he's
Great.
just coming from band.
Well, he looks professional. Go right ahead, sir.
Thank you. I do want to first of all say thanks so much for the roads that have been repaired. I live in a part of the street where we kind of, the few ounces of brains that I had kept jostling around every time I drove, but it's much better driving now. My brains are where they're supposed to be. However, in connection with the park, maybe I've been a little delinquent and not trying to keep up with what's going on. And putting an indoor park, indoor aquatic center at Spellerberg Park, I think would take away from the natural beauty of the place. Our kids walk down to that park with their friends and play. They use that hill in winter for sledding. And the CCHS is just around the corner, and we see their folks walking their kids periodically over there. So it could be a logistical nightmare for residents that live in that area to navigate with that, the traffic that could come in with an aquatic center. So keeping the park as pristine as it is adds to the beauty and adds to the well-being of families, young families in that area. So I would sincerely urge you folks on the council to consider that before anything permanent is taking place. Thank you so much.
Very good. Son, did you want to speak as well?
Do you want to say something, sweetheart?
You certainly can. And you don't have to either.
Do you want to say something?
That's okay. You did a great job. Be proud of your dad. Very good. Folks, anybody else want to speak to the council?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. It's I.L. Weideman again, council.
Okay.
You cannot tell me I can't speak because you don't have an ordinance saying that I can't speak twice at the same evening, in the same meeting. However, I do want to address your point of view pertaining to Spellberg. When you were running for election, you told some people you would get an indoor pool placed at Spellberg. You said that, Mayor. One of the council members was not a council member when we worked on the Drake Springs. She has pushed this. It seems like it's being pushed down our throat. You sat there this evening and just a few minutes ago and told a gentleman that the financing has to be approved by the council.
Yes.
That is not the way Mr. Kearney presented it this evening until he was directly asked if it was a done deal. Then he very eloquently backed down and said, no, it's not a done deal. But if you follow what was said this afternoon at the 4 o'clock meeting, it appears to be a done deal. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Weiderman. And you can, folks, we just to remain professional within the council chambers. I know the council would prefer that you just maintain your composure and your professionalism throughout. I would as well. Folks, anybody else want to engage the council on any topic? I don't want to dissuade you. Very good. Well, thanks again for your comments. I know the council appreciates them, and so do I. We'll now move on to item number 7.
Second reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, approving the release of a permanent utility easement located in Lot 1 of Uptown Exchange Lofts in addition to the City of Sioux Falls, Minnehaha County, South Dakota.
Good evening, Chad Heavey with Engineering. This 10-foot utility easement is on the east side of Main Avenue, just south of 4th Street. It was filed by plat of Lot 1 of Uptown Exchange Lofts in April of 2012. The easement is no longer needed, and the property owner has requested it be released. Engineering recommends approval.
Folks, this is a second reading, so we have the opportunity to talk about this if you're interested. Anybody interested? Very good. Council?
Move for approval, Anderson.
Second, Entenmann.
Councilor Anderson Jr. has made a motion to approve this item, seconded by Councilor Entenmann. Any discussion? A roll call vote, please.
Councilors Entenmann?
Yes.
Erpenbach?
Yes.
Jameson?
Yes.
Karski?
Yes.
Staggers?
Yes.
Aguilar?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
That is passed 7-0. Item 8.
First reading an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, amending the revised ordinances of the city by adopting the 2012 International Building Code and amendments thereto.
Good evening, Council. Ron Bell with Building Services. What you have in front of you is a first reading for the 2012 International Building Code. International Building Code is published by the International Code Council. This code deals with new construction, remodels, renovations for commercial buildings. We've went through a year-long process. The codes were out in January. In March, South Dakota building officials had a meeting in Rapid City and in Sioux Falls. We had 90-plus architects, contractors, building officials, and so forth that attended that, and ICC put on a very good seminar as to what all the code changes are. So what we're looking at is first reading. And what we have done with this is that we placed on our website the significant changes. It's what you have in front of you is the IBC ordinance synopsis and submittal. And on the website, it will show the significant changes that are found in the code and also any proposed changes that we are dealing with as far as local amendments. With this, we've met with the Mayor's Disability Committee. We met with the Multi-Housing Association. And this has also went through our Building Board of Appeals for review and approval for first and second reading.
Thank you very much, Ron. Council, any questions today? Councilor Staggers.
Yes, Ron, in regard to this updating of the International Building Code, I noticed that we have the sprinkler system coming back here. This time around, am I correct in saying that if you have 3 or more units in a multifamily construction, you have to have sprinkler system?
That's what we're proposing, yes.
How much is that going to add to the cost of housing in Sioux Falls?
You're probably looking at somewhere between $1.25, $1.50 a square foot.
Okay. So 1,000 square feet would be an additional $1,000 for the sprinkler system.
Yeah, this has a long history. Sprinklers were put in the code back in 1984. The city elected to not adopt that for 2 code change cycles. The city did adopt it in 91, and that was 3 stories and 16 units. The code modified that in 94 to say that it's 3 levels, not 3 stories, but 3 levels and 16 units, and we adopted that. When the 2000 code came out, nationally, the code changed to require sprinklers in all multifamily residences, and that's what's called R1s and R2s. R1s are transient, R2s are non-transient apartments. We have required sprinklers in hotels and motels since 2000. We've maintained the 16 units and 3 levels for 2003, 2006, 2009. This will be the 4th code change cycle where we have had a lesser stringent requirement for sprinklers. And what has happened is that the rest of the country has basically went to sprinkling apartments. So if you look at the majority of municipalities and counties that have adopted the IBC, those municipalities are sprinkling all their apartments.
So we have, like you mentioned, many other cities in the country adopting this. But what is the imperative that we do it? Just because other cities are doing it, we're going to do it? Is there any real reason to do this in Sioux Falls?
We had a death 3 weeks ago in a 2-story apartment building. This is about life safety.
Well, you know, in the past when we've talked about these international codes, it's always safety, always safety.
True.
But also, we keep forgetting that this is adding to costs of housing. So it's making it more difficult for people to afford. Now, especially we're in a recession or a downturn in the economy, this does not make things easier for people.
Well, I'd argue the recession with the amount of building permits that we're issuing, we've topped over $400 million with our building permits. So I think that we are doing very, very well as far as what we've done for the last 3 years.
But also, I would say that the average family income is down $4,000 over the past several years. And this is, and we have more, well, anyway, it's making it more difficult when you start adding to the cost of housing. I guess if you really want to make Sioux Falls the super safe city above anybody else in the entire nation, shouldn't we put sprinklers in all housing? Not just multi-housing, but single-family housing, too. If you want to save lives and things like that, that would seem to follow.
Well, if you look at statistics, that 80% of the deaths in fires are in residential construction. But there's no way that we can require sprinklers in single-family dwellings because the state legislature took that ability away from us in 2009 when it went into the International Residential Code. So that's not going to happen.
At least for the time being. So that's good. I'm glad to hear that. What other additional costs might we discover in this international code?
Well, you also have to realize that we have about 35 pages worth of amendments. And those amendments carry from code change cycle to code change cycle. And I would venture to guess that 9 out of 10 of those amendments result in less cost. And those amendments are through a review with those parts of the industry that are affected by these codes, whether it's the architects, building designers, building owners. If we could go through item by item, which I'm sure you don't want to, but the vast majority of these local amendments are creating a level of life safety, but is also less cost. And we can talk about that when we get in the IRC or the residential code, if you'd like.
I'd like to just ask one more question. That is, with this particular code, has there been any calculation at the national level or the local level as to how much this is going to add, including all the additional regulations? And
I can tell you that during code changes at the national level, that there is a reference as to whether this maintains or increases or decreases the cost whenever anybody's voting on these code changes. But no, I can't give you that number because you're talking about an all-encompassing code that deals with everything from accessibility to structural systems to fire resistivities to type constructions, on and on. That number is perilous at best.
Yeah. So we'll be voting in the blind then as far as costs.
Councilor Jameson.
Thank you. Ron, you know how to make Kermit stay with rules and regulations. He loves that stuff. On a house, say you've got a large house that's got a couple apartments in it, and I want to break it out, a large home, say an older home that I want to break out and do a third, put an additional third, make another apartment in that home. It already has 2 in it, 2 apartments. Would I need to then sprinkler that home?
That would be a change of use. That would go from an R3 to, which is a 1 and 2 family dwelling, to an R2, and yes, that would require a sprinkler system for that type of change in use. If you had an existing structure that had 3 units, you're just simply doing a remodel within that, no. But if you create more fire area or additions, or if you change the occupancy from some other use to an R2, yes, that would require a sprinkler system.
Okay, so if I own the property, I don't live there, but I rent out 2 spaces in it, I remodel or finish out the basement, so to speak, to add another apartment, I would then need to add sprinkler throughout the whole.
Went from 2 to 3, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Anderson, Jr.
Ron, in your meetings and conferences with all the different entities that are going to be affected by these new codes, and especially our multi-housing association, what kind of feedback did you get from them?
As far as?
Well, let's take a look at probably the main change in this, and that's the emphasis on the smaller apartments.
Well, I can tell you at the national level that all aspects are represented. The National Association of Home Builders is very strong within these meetings, as is the National Multi-Housing Council. All these entities have a voice at these code hearings and have the ability to sway the voters for all these code changes.
But that's the national level. I'm asking about local here.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Kenny, what's the question again?
What is our local multi-housing association saying about these changes that are looming in the future?
I think in second reading, you will hear that they have concerns about the increased cost of sprinklers in multi-housing.
Okay. If I may, there was another issue that was brought to me about code enforcement that maybe if we could get an update on the second reading might make us understand a little bit better how we utilize these codes in the name of safety. And that was an issue with the tire barn on North Cliff having to tear down a couple buildings and rebuild a building to store tires. Dean, you may be aware of this. Could we get maybe an explanation of what happened there? I've had some calls about that, and I think that might show us how these international codes are used in the name of safety and the cost, that it also cost a business to get up to code. And I think that might be a good thing for the second reading.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, Council, good dialogue. With that in mind, would anybody want to say the date of hearing and second reading for Tuesday, December 18th for item number 8?
So move, Entman. Second, Jameson.
Councilor Entman's made that motion, seconded by Councilor Jameson. A roll call vote, please.
Councilors Entman?
Yes.
Erpenbach?
Yes.
Jameson?
Yes.
Karski?
Yes.
Staggers?
Yes.
Aguilar?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
And that has passed 7-0. Item 9.
First reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, amending the revised ordinances of the city by adopting the 2012 International Fire Code and amendments thereto.
Council Division Chief Fire Marshal Dean Lanier. Following the International Building Code, the Fire Code is also going into the 2012 revision cycle as well. We've provided an ordinance submittal and synopsis for you to review. There are some changes within updates, principally geared towards new styles of construction with garden rooftops, provisions for photovoltaic power systems. Those are some of the things that have come up over the last 3 years that are being included within this revision of code. We do plan on bringing back quite a bit of technical experience in the second reading. We will bring not only a cost estimate, but we will also bring someone who's been in the field for us for the past 5 years, doing not only sprinkler inspections, but doing sprinkler installations. He brings about 10 years worth of installation experience along with him. He'll be able to cite for you not only the costs, but the estimates of what we're going to have for sprinkler provisions being included within the IBC and the IFC. We would also like to extend out to you an invitation if you would like to go out to any one of the properties that's being built right now and take a look at some of the properties that are being built with sprinkler systems. We'll be more than happy to talk with the contractors and make those facilities available to you so you can see firsthand knowledge of what it looks like when sprinklers do go into a multi-family residential occupancy.
Division Chief, thank you very much. Council, any questions? Councilor Staggers.
Yes, in our notes here, it says that this particular code is going to enforce the International Building Code sprinkler requirement. Can you explain that a little bit more?
It is really just following up on the building code provisions. The International Fire Code and the building code have duplicate chapters. You'll find about 5 duplicate chapters between the building code and the fire code that model each other and are similar, very similar as a matter of fact. So we included that language in there so there wouldn't be any confusion in it, sir.
Okay, so once again, the sprinkler system requirement in the first one is almost exactly the same as this one then?
It will be exactly the same language as what you'll find in the building code.
Councilor Anderson, Jr.
Dean, I think it's almost every year, at the end of the year, these code changes are brought to us as far as international building and fire codes.
Sure.
In the second reading, I know that we don't have a lot of time to discuss this now, but in the second reading, could we discuss also how these code changes affect our older buildings, the older apartments or commercial buildings, how these changes are going to affect them, or if we just, do we just bring them into the year of the building, or the changes that people might have to make?
Certainly. We'll be more than happy to share that.
Thank you.
Councilor Urbanbach.
Question. Councilor Anderson brings up a good point. It feels like we do these every year, but I don't think we do. Do you know? Is it every...
They are on a 3-year cycle.
Okay.
The 2009 didn't actually get adopted into code until about the mid-portion of 2010. This 2012, it takes us about 6 to 8 months to review everything, so we'll not be getting into this revision until the mid-portion of 2013.
Okay, great. Thank you. It just seems like every year. It's like drudgery.
I think we deal with it for 3 years after.
That's right.
Division Chief Lanier, would you mind, though, just answering Councilor Anderson's his comment, or at least letting the people of Sioux Falls that are here tonight, as well as that are engaged, in terms of is this retroactive, the things that you and Ron are talking, or is this on new things going forward? And just be brief.
Really, I hate to have to admit this in an open public environment, but I'll give you my fire marshal answer. It depends. I hate to have to admit that, but it does depend. We are not looking to enforce and make existing structures, make businesses go in and modify their buildings. Where we do find hazardous conditions that are beyond the scope of what the building was initially built for, and it is being used in a way that's not consistent with its original occupancy and use, then yes, we try to work with the business owners to mitigate that hazard down to something a little bit more tolerable. I would tell you that I've been involved in those CNN moments. And one of the good things about Sioux Falls is we've had a period of time where we haven't had many back-to-back, but the way in which we stay away from those CNN moments is by having good practices and good procedures on the job. That's by following separation criteria, using the fire code to move things that are incompatible away from each other, and using that model as a way of keeping fires generally small.
Thank you. Thank you. For the purposes of the Boy Scouts here tonight, give us your definition of a CNN moment.
Well, I've been involved in plane crashes where planes have actually flown into each other, not a 5-minute or a 5-hour fire, but 3 days worth of fire.
Thank you, Division Chief.
Mayor,
Councilor Anderson Jr., please.
I guess some of my comments are coming from experiences actually right after Dean joined the city departments here, and it just seems like, you know, it's that flexibility factor that I want to make sure that we still have here, that our officers can go in and look at something and be able to work with that property owner to come to a positive conclusion with, you know, and then also, as Councilman Staggers has stated, without there being a major cost, you know, to that property owner if possible. And it's a very difficult job. I've worked with both Ron and the fire chief here on some issues, and I just think as we have the opportunity to take a look at these fire codes and building codes, it's something that we shouldn't just pass on. I know that there's a lot of information in there, but it's something that I feel that we really need to take a look at, because it is the safety of our citizens and, you know, the cost also to those property owners.
Thank you, sir. With that in mind, would Councilor Anderson Jr., would you be willing to set a date of hearing and second reading for Tuesday, December 18th for this item?
So move.
Thank you.
Seconded.
And it has been seconded. If we could have a roll call vote, please.
Councilors Entman?
Yes.
Urbanbach?
Yes.
Jamison?
Yes.
Karski? Staggers?
Yes.
Aguilar?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Thank you. That is passed 7-0. USF students and Boy Scouts, just so you understand what's going on, this is a first reading, these items. And what it is it gives the department heads, the city employees, an opportunity to engage the council, educate them on these topics, as well as kind of give a little prep meeting to the people of Sioux Falls. Then, if they deem fit, they'll set up a second meeting. And then in the second meeting, that's the opportunity for the public to come forward and also give their input. the goods, the bads, and the uglies on any of these topics. So you don't have an opportunity to talk on these tonight, but you will right now on December 18th for the last two items we discussed. Item number 10.
First reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, amending the revised ordinances of the city by adopting the 2012 International Residential Code and amendments thereto.
Ron Bell with Building Services. For lack of a better term, this is a home builder's code. This code deals with 1- and 2-family dwellings, townhouses, not more than 3 stories in height with its own independent exit system. What we have done with this and what we do ever since the 2009 codes, or even prior to that with the uniform codes, is that we meet specifically with the Home Builders Association. We started our meetings, I believe, back in March of last year, and every code change item was brought to their attention. Discussions occurred, and where we felt that the codes were going too far on cost, on occasion, modifications were made to the codes themselves. Again, you'll see in the ordinance synopsis and submittal a list of local changes that did come up with the HBA and our group. One of the major things that happened with the IRC is that they took all the provisions out of the International Energy Conservation Code, which they hadn't before, and put it in the IRC, so there was a lot of new energy requirements for single-family dwellings, and also a lot of changes that occurred with that. There were, for one thing, there was requirements for blower door testing, and it was a consensus of the HBA that the blower door test was a cost that simply wasn't needed. Fire sprinklers in garages, again, we couldn't require those, so they were taken out. There was a requirement for fire protection of floors with light frame construction for firefighter safety. That provision was taken out, and the modifications to the types of insulating factors as far as energy were concerned, some of the factors stayed in place, some of the factors did not. We're in climate zone 6, which is aligned just south of Beersford. And south of Beersford, we would have the same requirements of the status quo. So what we did, one of the major issues was increasing the wall insulation from an R20 to an R20 plus 5, which meant foam plastic insulation on the exterior, which has other ramifications as far as the structural capability of the houses and so forth. So there was a series of issues that was discussed with Home Builders Association. With that, this Home Builders Association, it does support the changes that we made with the IRC.
Thank you, Ron. Councilor Stingers?
Yeah, Ron, in our notes it says that if we added certain energy requirements in the home sprinkler system, this would have added almost $12,000 to the cost of a home.
It would have been over 5 figures. I don't know what that exact figure would be, but yeah, if you included sprinklers and all of the provisions that dealt with the energy increase, I mean, we're not only talking about wall insulation. You'll see a lot in the mechanical code where there was testing for venting, for hot and cold air venting and so forth, ceiling events. Again, you'll see some of that in the mechanical code. Again, blower door tests were taken out, and other issues. So if we were to have adopted the code, a starter house would be at least 5 figures more than what we're doing right now. So we are decreasing
This is
those
one of the
costs.
concerns I have about these international codes, is that on the national level, we have a lot of special interest groups that are really eager to get their special, requirements in these codes. And obviously, we have a lot of energy people that want to insulate more and more and more. But it does sound like, from what you said, we are adding requirements for more insulation. Is that right? You said from R20, we're raising it?
No, for the things that we're increasing, we're going from a fenestration rate, and that's windows and doors, from an R35 to an R32. That's more energy efficient. The fact is, with the home builders, that all the windows that we're using are meeting that requirement. We have no issue with that. Same thing with skylight fenestration factors. That got more restrictive, but we're already having those types of materials put into those houses. There was no issue with the HBA on
So we shouldn't even have them in code. They're already doing it.
But this lists all of the energy requirements for a thermal envelope in the climate zone that we're at. How may I help you, Mr. Stagers?
Just tell me the cost of increase for a house with what we're putting in.
I would say with the things that we are taking out of the code, we are decreasing the cost of housing that would otherwise be required significantly.
Yeah.
Council, would anybody want to set a date of hearing and second reading for Tuesday, December 18th for item 10?
So move, Anderson.
Second, Entenmann.
Councilor Anderson Jr. has made that motion, seconded by Councilor Entenmann. If there is no discussion, a roll call vote, please.
Councilors Entenmann?
Yes.
Erpenbach?
Yes.
Jamison?
Yes.
Karski?
Yes.
Staggers?
Yes.
Aguilar?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
That is passed 7-0. Item 11.
First reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, amending the revised ordinances of the city by adopting the 2012 International Existing Building Code and amendments thereto.
This is a sister code to all of the international codes, and this contains requirements intended to encourage the reuse of existing buildings. This code was placed with the International Family of Codes. And it's really an alternate that a designer can use or a building owner can use instead of following the provisions that's directly out of the building code. So many times if you follow the requirements of the building code, that the costs do get prohibitive for a project to start. On the other hand, this code was developed for the reuse of existing buildings, and it's primarily with repairs, alterations, additions, changes of occupancies, and it deals with historic structures. So we have actively utilized this code, and this is really a follow along with all the other sister codes. There is a list of changes that were made at the national level, and we found that there was nothing that we were going to change here locally.
Council, with that in mind, would anybody want to set a date of hearing and second reading for Tuesday, December 18th for item 11?
So move, Entenmann.
Second, Anderson.
Councilor Entenmann has made that motion, seconded by Councilor Anderson Jr. A roll call vote, please.
Councilors Entenmann?
Yes.
Erpenbach?
Yes.
Jamison?
Yes.
Karski?
Yes.
Staggers?
Yes.
Aguilar?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
That is passed 7-0. Item 12.
First reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, amending the revised ordinances of the city by adopting the 2012 International Mechanical Code and the 2012 International Fuel Gas Code and amendments thereto.
Ron Bell Building Services, these deal with mechanical systems, fuel gas systems, which is heating, ventilation, air conditioning systems, HVAC contractors. Our Mechanical Board of Appeals really has to be commended because that board took the time, I believe they had 5 or 6 monthly meetings, about 2 hours a time, and they went through all of the changes that were in the mechanical code. What did result out of that was a series of about 5 or 6 changes locally that were added in. One requirement was the return air ducts, which is typically within a stud cavity of a house, was required to be hard duct. We eliminated that, maintained the status quo. Joints and seams, there's a requirement in the energy code that all portions of your duct systems be completely sealed, and that was eliminated, plus the requirement for the testing, eliminated at the request of the mechanical contractors. We also expanded on our Canadian standards for combustion air standards, where, again, that is less restrictive than what you'll find in the National Model Code. All based on the review that occurred with the Mechanical Board, these codes were proposed for your adoption.
Council, would anybody want to set a date of hearing and second reading for Tuesday, December 18th for item 12?
So move, Entenmann.
Councilor Edmonds made that motion, seconded by Councilor Karski. A roll call vote, please.
Councilors Entenmann? Erpenbach?
Yes.
Jamison?
Yes.
Karski?
Yes.
Staggers?
Yes.
Aguilar?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
That is passed 7-0. Item 13.
First reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, amending the revised ordinances of the city by adopting the 2012 International Property Maintenance Code and amendments thereto.
Ron Bell Building Services. This proposes to adopt the International Property Maintenance Code. This is not a code that deals with new construction. This deals with maintaining existing properties. This has to do with dilapidated structures, all aspects of the building that we utilize. With this, we met with the Multi-Housing Association and had some good discussions with them. If anything came out of that was an amendment that dealt with overcrowding within apartments. Previously, there was no standard in there because the language in the code was very subjective. It was just left up to the discretion of the property maintenance inspector, so we just simply eliminated it. But we came up with a standard of determining how many people can reside in an apartment based on the square footage of the bedrooms. And that was the best we could do, and I think that we were in agreement with the Multi-Housing Association. The worst case scenario of this is what happened in Rapid City. When you're talking about 20 people that's living in a small structure of two or three units, and 3 people died in a fire. So with that, we met with the Multi-Housing Association, met with the Property Maintenance Board, and to review these, and it's proposed for your consideration.
Councilor Karski.
Question, Ron. When I traveled with my family, we had 5 of us, we ran into the situation many times across the country where we couldn't have 5 people in one hotel room because the building code said you could only have 4, so we ended up getting additional rooms. Would this apply to hotel rooms too?
This is a good question, but this is room area and bedroom, so this is intended for non-transient occupancies, not transient occupancies.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Stangers.
I don't know. I guess I'm having a hard time seeing how we're going to enforce this. Are we going to start going into different buildings to see if there are 3 occupants staying in a 125 square foot room or something like this? I just think this is totally unnecessary. And also at the same time, you know, we do talk about people being killed in fires and so forth, whether it's in a small little residence or a huge apartment complex or whatever the case might be. I don't see how this has anything really to do with fires, but at the same time, it does have something to do with, are we going to, if we really enforce this and go around looking at each of these different rooms, we're going to force people out on the street because they can't find any other place to sleep.
Well, we don't go into existing rooms without the approval of either the tenant or the landowner. Never do we go into existing rooms and do any type of enforcement like that. We do go into areas based on a complaint, and if we have approval to go in, yes, we will enforce the codes that we have in place. This was requested by the Multi-Housing Association, and this is something that we came up with. So,
I understand why they would want this, but at the same time, I think we ought to just let people make their own decisions about if they're going to sleep in what square foot or room they're going to sleep in without the city becoming involved.
Councilor Henneman.
Ron, does this protect those property owners that own multifamily housing where they recognize that they've maybe rented this facility to a family that fell in compliance originally? Now that family is out of compliance, whether it's they've added more members to the family or they got other people staying with them, this allows them the right to protect their property rights. Is that not correct?
Correct.
Thank you. Move to approve, Entman.
Councilor Evans made a motion to set a date of hearing and second reading for Tuesday, December 18th.
Second, Erpenbach.
And it's been seconded by Councilor Erpenbach. If there's no further discussion, a roll call vote, please.
Councilors Intiman?
Yes.
Erpenbach?
Yes.
Jameson?
Yes.
Karski?
Yes.
Staggers?
Yes.
Aguilar?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
That is passed 7-0. Item 14.
Deferred from the City Council meeting of November 13, 2012, a resolution approving the cost recovery roll for construction of sanitary sewer main on West 69th Street from 1,600 feet east of South Medical Court to South Tallgrass Avenue and South Tallgrass Avenue from West 69th Street to 850 feet south.
Good evening, Chad Heavey with engineering. This cost recovery roll is for sanitary sewer pipe that was funded and installed during a city project on West 69th Street and South Tallgrass Avenue. Approximately 2,500 feet of 18 and 8-inch sewer pipe was installed in 69th Street, and approximately 825 feet of 8-inch sewer pipe was installed on or in Tallgrass Avenue. Because of topography, sewer pipes typically cross our arterial streets. They are not installed longitudinally as is transmission water mains. These sewers lines function as service lines and are typically installed by the land developer. However, because of the topography in this area, we worked with the adjoining property owners, and it was determined that this service line should be installed in the arterial street with the city project. Tonight's resolution will approve a roll to recover these costs from the benefiting properties. This resolution affects 9 properties, and the recoverable amount is approximately $188,000. The cost recovery amounts range from approximately $46,100 to approximately $2,500. The costs allocated to each property will be delayed without interest until the property connects to the sewer main. At that time, the amount is payable in full. The affected property owners were notified by letter of this public hearing, and we did receive one question from one of the affected property owners, and it has been satisfactorily addressed.
Councilor Sagers.
Yes. The 40, I think you said the highest was 46,000. Is that right, Chad?
Yes.
Can I assume that that's KNWC?
I will tell you here in 1 second. Yes, Northwestern College. It's the property G.
Yeah. Now, they haven't hooked up or anything, but I would assume they would hook up from, not Tallgrass, but is that 69th?
69th and Tallgrass.
Yeah. So I'm just guessing, you can tell me if I'm wrong, but it seems likely they would hook up from 69th Street?
It'll depend on the topography of the land, and I think part of it falls to the north, and the rest goes to the south and to the west. So portions of it will connect to the north, and others will go to the other direction.
Because I'm just wondering, if it is connected to the north on 69th, then we're having them pay for all this other sewer going down Tallgrass, and I'm just wondering, is that really fair?
We worked hand in hand with especially Northwest College here on all the improvements out here, from dedication to right-of-way to purchasing right-of-way for turn lanes to water and to sewer. So I believe this is fair.
Them paying the most, 46,000? No, I mean, it's just, if they're only using the pipe on 69th, why should they be assessed for the pipe on Tallgrass, is what I'm saying. They're not going to use that.
And I believe if they do connect to 69th, they're only going to pay that cost recovery. But if they would connect into both, they will pay that full amount.
Oh, okay. So I guess why are we asking for 46,000 out of them?
That is their appropriate share for this cost recovery.
But if they only connect from 69th, then it's not going to be 46, is that right?
There's probably some confusion with this one. I'm not explaining it to you probably the best that I should be. This again is a service line that benefits them. Now, I don't know if they, I haven't seen their plans on what they plan to do.
I mean, if I was Northwestern, I would definitely hook in on 69th Street to save some money.
But what if they can't?
Well, that's what I'm not sure. Can they or can't they?
And I don't know what they will want to do. It'll all depend on how they develop their property.
But we are assessing them 46,000.
We're not assessing anybody tonight.
Well, when they
we
hook
are putting a cost recovery role in place so that at the time they do wish to connect, they will pay
46,000.
Their appropriate share.
Yeah.
Councilor Inman.
And to that point, you said their appropriate share. So if they hook up only on the front side, they probably only pay the front footage, that portion of it. If they don't hook up on the west side, they will not pay for that portion of it.
That is something I would need to clarify for the council.
Okay.
If you could.
Councilor Buck.
Couple of things. One, what are they doing now? That business has sat there for a long time. Do they have
I'm sure they're on a septic system.
septic system?
Yep.
Okay. And
As are most of the
all along there.
the properties on the south side are.
and you said you've worked with them. They're like, yeah, bring us city sewer, we want it, right? Then my other question is, where does Tallgrass go? If you go north on Tallgrass, right now it goes nowhere, right? But next year, where does it go?
It's the Solberg overpass.
And so this piece of land, G, that we're talking about, is a pretty valuable piece of land.
Extremely.
Thank you.
This is a do you need a motion to approve the
Yes,
resolution?
I do,
So
Counselor.
moved.
Thank you, Counselor.
Gentlemen.
And it has been seconded by Counselor Anderson Jr. I appreciate it. If there's no further discussion, a roll call vote, please.
Counselor Zintemann?
Yes.
Erpenbach?
Yes.
Jameson?
Yes.
Karski?
Yes.
Staggers?
Yes.
Aguilar?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
That is passed 7-0. Item 15.
A resolution amending the City of Sioux Falls engineering design standards.
The engineering design standards are the standards followed to design and construct the city's infrastructure. These standards are reviewed annually and revised accordingly. Ordinance 38-22 requires that the City Council approve the engineering design standards by resolution. These proposed revisions have been approved by the Infrastructure Review and Advisory Board have been recommended by the Council's Land Use Committee. Tonight we have revisions to chapters dealing with sanitary sewers, water mains, and storm drainage. Revisions to the sanitary sewer include clarifying where the depth measurement should be taken to determine pipe depth, and that the city engineer has to approve pipe grades less than a 2% slope, requiring 60-inch diameter manholes when either the influent or effluent pipes are 18 inches in diameter or greater, clarifying where manholes are placed, and requiring wastewater pumping station structures and electrical and mechanical equipment is protected from the 100-year flood event, and then the equipment is accessible during a 100-year flood event. The revisions to the water main includes adding language regarding the installation of a water main 12 inches in larger under drainage structures. These requirements provide pipe protection and enhance future maintenance activities. Instead of individual water meters, industrial, commercial, and multifamily residential requirements, residential may use master meters. This revision requires that the master meters are approved and reviewed by the city engineer for compliance with backflow, electrical, heat, and ventilation requirements. Clarifying that each platted lot is required to have an individual water service line. Clarifying that polyethylene pressure pipe is not to be used within city right-of-way or public easements. And then requiring that manufactured home parks who want to use a mastered meter in lieu of individual meters must attain the same approval as we mentioned earlier. And then the drainage improvements include revising the location of the sump pump collection system in the front yard easement, adding language to this chapter that already exists in Chapter 13, plan submittals, and the added language is in regards to the maximum release rate for projects over 5 acres in size that are zoned non-single family residential. So that completes my presentation, and I will answer any of your questions.
Councilor Staggers.
Yeah, just to clarify, Chad, all new housing, single-family housing in Sioux Falls has to have a sump pump collection system. Am I correct in that?
All new developments are required to put the collection system in.
I know when we talked about this a few years ago, not every place really needs a sump pump, so I guess some people would say, why are we being so, rigid here in requiring every house, whether they really need a sump pump or not, to have one?
Well, we don't require everybody at this point to connect to the system.
But having a collection system, yes.
The system is put in
Yes.
because we're going back now and
Every year we go into neighborhoods and install systems because the sump water is such a nuisance. And plus, the collection systems that are put in, the materials are reimbursed to the developers by the city. And the point is that we will put this pipe in when the costs or expense to the city are very small versus coming back in at a later date and doing a retrofit program.
But I guess my concern is that the topography of some parts of Sioux Falls, you don't need a sump pump collection system. Now, other areas, yes, but why do we do this when it might not be necessary?
Your methodology you would think would be correct, but you could talk to developers and home builders across the city that you would never guess that an area, by looking at it, would have a drainage issue or a groundwater issue or ever use a sump pump. And conditions change as land develops. The Home Builders Association is very adamant that we have the system but do not require hooking up because of those certain requirements. They just, I mean, there's a developer in town that's hired engineers to go out and has been hired to tell them to go out and determine whether these sump pumps in these houses will run. And they've done tests and studies, and there's just no way to predict the groundwater path. And if a sump pump's going to run or if it isn't going to run. And we've had sump pumps that haven't run for 20 years, and just like that, they start running and they don't stop running.
Thanks, Chad. I think we all have a prime example of what happened here just a couple of years ago, dealing with the water and the need to increase our sanitary system. It's illegal, as we know, to dump sump water into a sanitary sewer, but evidently it's happening throughout the city because the rates of water that we had in our system. And speaking for those people that had to go in and put those systems in, you know, quite honestly, I think this is one of those cases where we're being extremely proactive in protecting the city as we go forward from an unwanted expense that should never have happened in the first place. So I think this is a great effort on your part to identify this, and I thank those home builders that are part of this too.
All we're doing with tonight's change is moving the sump pump in the front of the house from 8 feet behind the curb to now within 2.5 feet, just so we don't run into maintenance issues.
Councilor Jamison.
Chad.
Yes.
Chad, if you could tell me, all the sump pump collection system is an access line into the storm sewer, right?
Typically, there's a corrugated pipe that's installed right off the property line or right down the middle of the property line behind the houses. And then there's a stub out, just like in the front of your house, there's a stub out for sewer. There's a stub out at each property line for the sump pump connection.
And compared to the rear sub pump collection systems, this is a lot more affordable, right?
Well, most of the time, the sump pump collection systems are put in the back. But usually these front sump pump collection systems are retrofits, where we can't put it in the back and we have to go to the front. And usually in our retrofits, they're always in the front. In the boulevard is where or right underneath the sidewalk is where all these systems go. And it's expensive. This is just moving it into a better location so we don't see failures in that front collection system line.
Right, thank you.
Councilor Enneman, or?
Move to approve.
Second, Urbanbach.
Councilor Enneman's made a motion to approve this item, seconded by Councilor Urbanbach. If there is no further discussion, a roll call vote, please.
Councilors Entman?
Yes.
Urbanbach?
Yes.
Jamison?
Yes.
Karski?
Yes.
Staggers?
Yes.
Aguilar?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
That is passed 7-0. Council, any other items? Anybody want to make a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn, Entman.
Second.
Councilor Enneman's made that motion. It's been seconded by Councilor Karski. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? This meeting is adjourned. Thank you, Sioux Falls. Thank you, audience. Thank you, council. Make it a great night.